Hey guys, what's going on? It's Rekt Capital and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video where we're going to be talking about a very simple concept, but can it really be that simple? For Bitcoin being in a macro range, we're going to be talking about a lot of different concepts here. The weekly bearish divergence, the long-standing higher low, what this looks like in the context of the RSI across time. Are there any similarities? And what sort of price action could we see from Bitcoin going forward? Tying this in also with RSI behavior as well. And could that mean that we have some sort of really important event closer to the Bitcoin halving? How does the halving impact all of these things? It's going to be a really interesting episode. Lots of stuff to talk about. So subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoy videos like this, and let's dive right in. So can it be just this simple? Resistance area here, is Bitcoin forming a range high resistance, and this bear market bottom being the range low of this overall range? Could it really be that simple? As long as this range high continues to reject price, then maybe it is that simple. Maybe price just continues to act out its weekly bearish divergence that we're seeing here on price action, higher highs right over here at a resistance and lower highs at the RSI. So essentially a bearish divergence developing at this range high resistance. Lots of confluence for this being a major point of rejection potentially, and juxtaposing that with the far end of this range, the range low, we have a higher low here. But what's really important to note is that if we have a bearish weekly divergence play out here, so we see price reject from this range high resistance and then drop into the range low, for instance, just for hypothetical speech here, I don't think we'd see a bullish divergence develop here. And we'll be talking about that in a bit more detail as to why, because if we just focus, for instance, on this portion of price action, which got us to these bear market lows, you can actually notice that we have lower lows consistently on the price action, but we have higher lows on the RSI. And that's quite interesting because could we potentially see something similar in terms of bullish divergences at the range low? Should we even get there? Well, for that to occur, price would, or at least Bitcoin's RSI would need to go below this region. So it'd have to get into the really, really oversold region below the 30 RSI. And that's a very big ask, speaking about current 60 RSI levels, because for a bullish divergence to occur, we'd either have to have some sort of lower low on the RSI or a lower low on price, for instance. So I don't think we're going to get a lower low on price. I feel like 15,500 is the bear market bottom. So a higher low on price is the more likely scenario. But a bullish divergence for the RSI to go below 30 for that new lower low, it's also a big ask and probably unlikely. So we won't see a bullish divergence develop here in the same way we saw right over here. But let's just talk about this portion of price action and these series of higher lows. You see that this is a series of higher lows, lower lows, apologies, and higher lows on the RSI. And this took a certain period of time until the massive breakdown event right over here. So this capitulation event. So we're seeing high lows here and then a breakdown event. And if we were to just juxtapose this with, for instance, the beginning of the weekly bearish divergence here and the very beginning of the first high, then if this weekly bearish divergence is to last a similar amount before we see a breakdown, right? Because if we were to just do this, where the higher low first originated on the RSI and where the lower low essentially first kind of originated for this portion of price action, then the breakdown event that followed after this period of time of around from maybe mid-June to mid-October, November, if we were to do the same thing here, then from around April to maybe mid-September or so a month and a half away, still several weeks away if this is actually going to be symmetrical in any way. We're still a few weeks away from a potential strong breakdown. And in the meantime, we could either just hold these highs or just pull back slowly, slow bleed into this support region here before finally giving way and seeing a stronger retrace occur. That's one of the potential scenarios if we see a mimicking in this bullish divergence and the length of this bullish divergence really repeat for the bearish divergence here on the weekly time frame. But one of the things to mention about this higher low right over here, because of course we have a lower high here on the RSI, weekly bearish divergence, and this higher low is accompanying this higher low on the price action. So no real changes there, but what I really want to talk about is this green box. And during this period of retracement, which we saw in 2022, and then we saw the lower highs here, this was generally the RSI being between 2022 to 2023. It's been in the lower half of the RSI region. So if we think about RSI from 0 to 100, the 50 point is the midpoint, and you can see very clearly that if it's below, then we're pretty much in maybe non-trending territory, even downtrending territory. But if we're above 50, then we can be in a new trend altogether, uptrending territory, or even uptrend weakening territory, which is potentially what we're seeing right now. So in 2022 to 2023, definitely below the midpoint in 2022 to 2023. Small fake out here, but generally below the 50 area. And what we're seeing here is now we're above the 50 area. Interestingly enough, from the very beginning of 2023, pretty much in the same way that we began this period, right? So it's pretty similar. Now we're beginning 2023 and we've been holding above the 50 region. And if we just see a repetition in terms of this being a year-long range above the 50 region and this being above, below the 50 region, apologies, and this being above the 50 RSI region, if it's going to be a year, then we might have to propagate this lower high a little bit more, because potentially, if we were to see something similar where we're still holding the higher low here, consistently holding the higher low for 6 months at a time, could we see a scenario where we just see the RSI continue its weekly bearish divergence, continue to reject from this lower high before ultimately breaking down from here? Could that happen closer to the end of the year, essentially repeating this sort of tendency here? Because we've seen this higher low last for a long time. Could we see the same thing happen here? And of course, could we see a sort of lower high, a bullish divergence take place? Because it's very difficult to say if Bitcoin's RSI will drop below the 30 region. Because if it does, then we'd finally see that lower low on the RSI, and as a result, potentially a higher low in the price action, and so a bullish divergence. So if this sort of scenario were to play out, we could see a very low RSI going into the halving. And what's interesting about that sort of scenario is that we don't know how low will this lower low be. We don't know what angle this higher low will be for price. I have a strong confidence that the bear market bottom of 15,500 will remain intact, but I do expect, based on historically recurring tendencies, that Bitcoin's price action will experience a significant retrace going into the end of the year, going into early 2024, and also experience a retrace in the coming weeks closer to the halving event itself. So could the RSI get to such a low point that we're essentially forming a lower low, so a bullish divergence? I feel like that's less likely. But it's possible that the RSI will retrace a little bit more and break down below the 50 region. And it'll be very interesting to just see how and what sort of structure we form on the RSI before finally lifting off. It won't be a bullish divergence in all likelihood, because that would require price to get really oversold. But it'll be really interesting to see if we see some sort of higher low in the price action, or at least in the RSI. In any case, that's about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this RSI analysis, as well as Bitcoin just being in a range. Could it really just be that simple? Really interesting to look at that possibility, because even for things to stay bullish for price, it doesn't even need to drop to this range low support. It can just maintain a higher low, and this higher low can take different shapes and sizes. We don't know the degree angle, especially of this higher low. Will it be propagated against the candle body bottoms right over here as per the blue one, or will it be propagated against the candle body lows and the downside wicks of this overall higher low that ended the bear market bottom? Really interesting to take into account. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave a like. It will really help me out for the algorithm and so forth. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you found it educational. I'm Rekt Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.